Hello, welcome back to another live. My name is Laken, and I go live every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern to chat about your life and your goals. And every week I'm like, I need an intro for right now, especially because I learned from some of you that it takes a second when you're here live because the ads are playing at the beginning. And it doesn't start until I actually go live. And so I need to create the intro to kill the time at the beginning right here, and something for those of you watching the replay, something for you to enjoy at the beginning. Although I just realized when I watch lives, I see the intro. I wonder how that works. Well, I guess it's also possible because I pay for YouTube Premium, so I'm not watching the ads. So maybe that's my situation. But I'm going to give it another second or two for everyone to join, and then we will kick it off with our first question, as always, which is, what is one small win that you have to share from the last week? If you are here live, please say hello in the chat and let me know what your win is from the last week. And if you are part of the replay fam, please share your win in the comments. I'd love going back and reading through all of your wins. My win, one day at a time. There's just been a lot going on over here. I've been nothing drastic, I guess, for lack of a better word. Just like I've been in a little bit of a funk, and the month hasn't started the way that I wanted to. And so I've just been kind of focusing on one day at a time over here. Normally, I like for my win to be whatever my action step was from the last week, and that is not what it is because I did not do that. But it is what it is. So let me know in the comments, what is your win from the last week? I've got my iced coffee here. You can hear it, but you cannot see it. We also still have podcast land behind us. So if you didn't know, I have a podcast with my sister. It's nothing serious. It's just literally me and my little sister. She's 9 years younger than me. So it's just us chatting about life. And we started it last year because we started recording when I was pregnant. We didn't start releasing them until October, but we are on, this week will be episode 20, which is bananas to me. And we recorded last weekend with our future sister-in-law because that was the day that she was free to record. But then this weekend we have plans to record like a bunch. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to leave it up. I'm just going to leave the chairs and the mics up and set and ready to go so I don't have to deal with it. And so we're going to do that this weekend. I'm very excited. All right, let's see. Always an ad first. Yeah. It's a YouTube being YouTube. Alcohol-free for 15 days and made it to 7 miles of your marathon training. Jessica, those are not small wins. Those are very large wins. Congrats. Tammy, thank you for being my example for if your YouTube name is not your name that you prefer to go by. I would love for you to include your name. That way I can address you by your name. I made several home-cooked meals and I voted. Yes, those of you who were able to vote yesterday in your state. Illinois was not on the docket yesterday. And by the time it gets to Illinois, it's probably not going to matter, unfortunately, for the primaries. I cannot believe we're already on another election year, but I want to say I typically do not talk about politics in my content. Voting is very important. Please go vote. Use your voice. That is important. And my other recommendation related to this topic is to follow Sharon Says So on Instagram. She shares, that is like my number one starting place for information and news. And then if I need or want to know more information about something specific, I can go further from there. But I just very much always appreciate her, the way that she shares the news on Instagram. So always my recommendation. Finishing your taxes. Good job. Finished 4th Wing and your 7th book of the year. Saw the signs of burnout and took action. And you and your boss know what you need to say no to, new assignments and tasks you can focus on. That is huge. That's not a small win for sure. Finally created bank accounts for the kids. Been on the list since January. It happens. Finally connected with the dentist and set up your next appointment. River J, we have been on a no scroll in the morning and taking healthier steps while waking up. I love that. I also probably need to implement something similar. I know I mentioned last week, we talked a lot about scrolling and social media and consumption and spending time on those platforms. That a likely goal for me in Q2 is going to be to cut back on my time on social media. Awesome. I love hearing about all of your wins. Let's quickly talk about my reading check-ins, I don't really have much to say because I have not, once again, another week has gone by where I haven't finished a book. And in fact, one of my currently readings is on pause until I get it back from the library. So I was listening to Set Boundaries, Find Peace, and I just, again, with all the things going on, I have not been in a place where I wanted to consume audio, nonfiction audio. So I'm not watching any of the YouTube channel videos. I just keep saving them into my watch later folder. I haven't been listening to any podcasts. I haven't been listening to audiobooks. I've just been like binge watching TV show, like comfort TV shows. So I did not finish this book and then the library took it away. So I have placed a new hold. And so when I get it back, I will be able to finish it. So that one is currently on pause. Still reading the same hard copy, which is Chill and Prosper for nonfiction, and then still reading A Court of Thorns and Roses. I'm doing the hybrid hard copy audio, but I haven't read much in the last week, to be honest. And then in my funk state, I also missed quite a few days of my daily stoic. So I'm now at 86% of days for my daily stoic. Still feel good about being on track to finish the year at least 80%, especially once y'all help me come up with my travel plan for the daily stoic. I may also still buy the Kindle version. I was just thinking about it. It kind of depends on the length of the trip, right? But all this to say that I want to remind you that every month's progress looks different, right? Like in January and February, I was cruising through books and I was crushing it. And I was like, I'm finishing this and I'm reading this and it's going well and all these things. And then well, maybe like not even all of February, the first half of February. And then I kind of hit a wall in all these different areas. Every month's progress is going to look different. It is not going to be linear progress every month throughout the year. It's just not. I have shown a little graph. I don't have it here to pull up, but I've shown this little graph on various community coaching calls where it's like your progress can look very different from somebody else's month to month. And at the end of the year, you could still end up with the same total progress on your goals. So do not fret if your January and or February, or at this point, the beginning of March doesn't look like the way that you thought it was going to look. Every month is going to look different. So with that, let's move into my goal check-in for March. Here is my goal snapshot. My goal video went up on Monday. So I'm not going to go through all of the steps in detail and like what they mean. If you're interested in hearing about what all the steps are and the details behind them, you can watch that goals video. The lies are just meant to be a current, like I took this photo this morning snapshot of what my goals look like and which ones I have made progress on and which ones I haven't. One of the things that I am doing this month that I've actually never done before, but I helped my sister figure out how to do with her goals in January actually, is having something where you have the weekly goal and it's a number. And in the past, right, I would have told you that don't put 5 weekly tasks on the weekly steps. Put that 5 times so that you get all the check marks. Well, you could do that. Or what I did, which is what I help my sister do, is put it on the daily section, but know that I'm not going to check it off every day because I'm not trying to do it 7. I'm trying to do 5. And I talked about this more in my goals video. I could even double up and play catch up. So even though you can see that I did it 4 times last week, that was actually how many times I did it total. I could still get my weekly check mark because it's not the number of days, it's the number of tasks. Either way, I only did 1 on each of those check marks in last week's. And so then in the weekly section, I didn't get the check mark because I didn't do 5, but I put the little 4 next to it, which that I directly got from my sister. She started doing that. And so I can still see the progress that I'm making, which is really cool. So that is how that is going so far. You can see that I have not even like blinked at December daily yet. Oh man. But what I'm going to remind you and me is that there are still 25 days left in March, and that's not counting today. That's like assuming today I get off this live, I go back to my little peanut who is still having, she had a doctor's appointment yesterday. We have a community call tonight, and then I do nothing else besides that today. There are still 25 days left in March for us to make progress on our goals, all of us. So that is your reminder. That is my reminder. And that is the update on my goals. I'm going to quickly check the comments before we move into the topic. Attended yoga again. I love it. Read 1 book and 2 short stories, and I'm halfway through another book. Look at that progress. All right. Today's topic is, well, before we get into the topic, let me start with, we're approaching a new quarter, right? I know it's only March 6th, but the end of the month will be here before you know it. And we are going to be moving into a new quarter. Now, maybe you actually are feeling none of these things I'm about to say, and you're like, it doesn't mean anything to me. I don't change my goals at the end of the quarter. I don't do quarterly goals. You could be feeling a million different ways. Maybe you want to blow up your annual goals. You're like, I don't like these. These are not working. I'm not motivated. I need new goals. Maybe you're way ahead. Maybe you're crushing your goals, and these goals you set for the year and for the quarter, you're way ahead of them. Maybe you just need some slight tweaks. Maybe things are going pretty well and you just need to tweak a couple of things here and there. And maybe it's a combination of all of these things, depending on the goal, right? Maybe one goal you want to blow up and change and get rid of. Maybe one goal you're way ahead, and maybe one goal you just need some slight tweaks. There is no right or wrong way to feel, but I want you to know, like, it's okay to feel these things. Like, you're going to be feeling these things as we are approaching a somewhat of a milestone in the year. So over the next few weeks in the month of March on the lives, we're going to be talking about quarterly refreshes and different aspects of it over the next couple of weeks. Today, that topic is changing action steps. So not necessarily changing goals, but changing the action steps you're taking to achieve those goals. Because my guess is, if you're anything like me, most of us are probably going to be keeping at least one of the same goals that you had in Q1. Whether it's just the annual goal that you're keeping and you're picking a different focus for Q2, or you're literally like, I am almost directly carrying over, at least right now in my brainstorming phase, I have brainstormed that I'm going to carry over directly a Q1 goal into Q2. So what does that mean for Q2? Do we keep all the action steps the same? Do we change them? Like, what does that look like? So what I'm going to give you today are 3 questions, 3 categories, Laken, because 2 of them have multiple questions. 3 things to think about as you start to think about the refresh. This is not, you need final answers to this today or you're going to fail the rest of the year. No. That is not what I'm saying. These are just things for you to start to think about as we move in to the second quarter and refreshing, changing our action steps for Q2. So question number 1, how has your life changed? I'm just going to pause and let that sink in for a second. Also, I'm not asking you to answer these right now with us in the comments or on a piece of paper. Come back and reference this when you need to. Think about these questions as you're brushing your teeth and commuting to work, etc. But how has your life changed since you set goals last time? So since the middle of December. Some of it might be really obvious if you've had a big life change. You've moved, you've changed jobs, you got into a relationship, you got out of a relationship. There's some very obvious things that could have happened. Some of it could be a direct impact, right? Like, my little girl grew 3 months. That is actually a big change, right? I didn't have her, but she went from a 3-month-old, 3.5-month-old to now a 6.5-month-old. There's a lot that has changed about her life and her needs. Some for the more helpful for me, right? Like sleeping patterns, and some of them a little less helpful. I have to feed her real food, and that is a lot of extra cleaning and things and thoughts and planning that goes into that. So that's how my life has changed. I have gotten into more of a routine with my mom and having help with my daughter. But at the same time, it's still all up in the air. And then my mom's going to go out of town for 2.5 weeks next month. And what am I doing that week? How am I balancing that, right? Thinking about what has changed in your life. And it could be as small as I don't even why don't I have an example in my head of a small change that could have happened? I'm not saying it had to be something giant. It could be something small that could still have an impact on changing your action steps, which is what we're getting at in the topic for today, is how has my life changed? And how might that, I should have put this on here, how might that impact my action steps? How might that change impact the action steps that I'm going to take related to my goals? Question 2, ask yourself, what worked in Q1? And before you come at me and say, nothing worked, Q1 was terrible, I did nothing, One thing. I want you to try very, very hard, even if it's hard, to come up with one thing that did work. And even if it's not related to your goals, that's okay. What's one thing that worked for you in Q1? Was it um I like my I didn't put any examples in my notes because usually I'm pretty good at coming up with them on the fly, like on like examples off the top of my head. And right now they are just like not working, with the exception of like coming up with my own examples, right? Um, what works is making a plan kind of the week of with my mom. What worked is um also trying to find things to share that are what worked for me and not necessarily related to my little girl. Um, doing my morning routine in different chunks and not all at one time. That worked for me. Getting back onto batching content at the end of the month for the whole next month. That worked for me. And then asking yourself, what action steps actually help me work towards my goals? And I feel like I reference this call all the time. But the very first live of the year, like the very first one of the year, was how to get clear on what your goals mean to you. And that is still so essential, because if you do not know what that goal looks like for you and what it means to you, you don't know if your action steps actually helped you get towards that goal. So, for example, I was just texting with somebody in the community yesterday about their reading goal. They were like, I don't know what to do about my reading goal. I am a rebel tendency. And so I struggle sometimes with setting exact number goals, but I don't necessarily want to say read these exact books because then my rebel tendency doesn't like that. And I said, before we even consider on like what you're reading or what your goal is, I want you to tell me why. Why are you reading? What does a reading goal mean to you? What does it look like to you? What are you trying to get out of this reading goal before we even start to talk about what the goal should look like? And so you might have to rewind and go back. Now, don't get me wrong, that's going to be part of the refresh. Spoiler alert. Getting clear on what our goals mean to us and kind of revisiting that. But you have to know what you wanted to know if the action step helped you get there, right? Did you accomplish what you set out to accomplish? Then those action steps are working, right? It worked for you. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to keep doing them, right? It doesn't mean that you have to do those same action steps. You could still change them. But by knowing what did work can really help you pick to either keep those same action steps or pick different but similar ones in the next quarter. And it likely is not going to surprise you that the last piece is what didn't work. What didn't work about your goals or your action steps in Q1? Which action steps did you not do? Which action steps were really hard? Which action steps felt like they were just a chore and not actually getting you anywhere? And then dig a little deeper and ask yourself, what didn't work about it? Was it that it was too big? Was it that it was at the wrong time of day? Was it that you needed somebody else to do something first before you could do it? Was it that you were trying to do something that was like that didn't actually align with your goal? Was it that the action step didn't actually matter and you just put it down because that's what everybody does for that goal, right? What didn't work about that? Once again, even if you're changing your goal and there's an answer like this action step didn't work, but I'm not doing that goal anyway, so it doesn't matter. It's still information. It's still knowledge. It's still it tells you something about how you function and operate to know whether it worked or didn't work. And I want to remind you that just because something didn't work doesn't mean that you failed. You're not a failure. You didn't fail. It just didn't work for you. And that is information that you can then carry into the next month and the next quarter. I would love to sit here and tell you that your year is going to look perfect and that you're going to accomplish all the goals that you set out to, and all the action steps are going to be perfectly aligned with your goals, and you're just going to make progress on them all year, and it's just you're going to cross finish line in December and it's going to look great. No, that's not what it's going to look like. That just isn't how it works. There's a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of learning. There's a lot of seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work. And sometimes you find these big breakthroughs, like figuring out, oh my gosh, this really does work for me and I am crushing it. And then sometimes you find you're like, that does not work for me at all. And I know that now, and now I can take that information and use it for different purposes and different goals. So all of those things, it's not a test, not a quiz. I'm not asking you to like write essays about these questions. It's just to get you thinking. It's just to get you thinking and to get your brain, your little gears turning so that we can do a whole refresh, a whole goal refresh. And even if you are one of these people from way back here that's like, I just need to tweak a couple things. Like, I don't actually want to change my goals. That's fine. We're still going to check in with our annual goals. We're going to acknowledge the progress that we've made. We're going to acknowledge what has worked and what has not worked, and then move into our quarterly goals. And once again, even if you do not set quarterly goals, my guess is you probably still need to break down your annual goals. You probably need another session of breaking down and coming up with action steps from what you did in December. And then, as always, we've got to set up the new month. So the third part of it, which isn't even in this comment, is we've got to get April all set up. But the meat and potatoes of it is getting our annual goals checked in with and our quarterly goals all set up and broken down. And we're doing that on a weekend because fitting all that into a weeknight is not good for any of our brains. So we are going to do that on a weekend. And I know that I shared this last week, but I want to make sure that you see it again. The quarterly goal refresh call is going to be Saturday, the 23rd at 11 a.m. Eastern time. I know that's a little bit early for those of you on the West Coast, but I'm trying to squeeze in as much of our Europe friends as possible. So 11 a.m. Eastern time, and we're going to do all the things that I just said. I also have been getting a lot of questions is, do you need to join? Like, when do you need to join by now that we're on Teachable and not on Patreon? Which, can you believe it's been a year since we moved from Patreon to Teachable? Anyways, it doesn't matter. You could either join like right now and join the call tonight. We have a Q&A call tonight. I was just working on the PowerPoint for it before this. Some great questions submitted. Or you could join literally at 10:59 on the 23rd and grab that Zoom link and join in. Either way, you have a month access from the day that you join. So if you join today, you can listen to all the March calls and then decide at the end of March if you want to stay a member, or you could join the morning of the 23rd and have a whole month from that point and then decide at the end of April if you want to stay a member. So that I just want to make sure that you know. I'm very excited to be together on Saturday and not feel the mental burnout of like a weeknight, and also not feel that crunch of like, oh, it's this hour at this place and this hour at this place, and just like we have time to do it. I'm telling you to block 2 hours. And it's possible I go a little bit longer than that, but at least 2 hours. And the European friends are excited. I know. I'm so excited to see all of you live. I'm so excited. Took the freedom to speak for all of us. Go for it, Iki. Oh my gosh, Colleen, next quarter she's going to be walking. Oh, don't say that. Ooh, don't say that. Ooh. Yikes. Yikes. I am not prepared for that. All right. That is all I have in terms of the topic. The monthly membership is $20 a month. And like I mentioned, you can cancel at any time. So you join for $20 and you get access for 30 days. And then you can decide if you want to keep going. It comes with the 4 calls that I just showed here. And then it also comes with access to the Facebook group as well as texting so that we can chat one-on-one about your individual goals. So my youngest walked at 8. I'm assuming you mean 8 months. Whoa. No, thank you. Oh my gosh. 8 months. Oh, the mobile aspect of it. All right. Any other questions that you have about the topic, about anything? My little banner, like I accidentally delete that one almost every single week. It feels like, okay, so imagine there's a banner that says, we're moving into Q&A time. This is your time. You can ask questions about anything that you want to chat about. It could be about your specific goals, a struggle that you're having. And I promise, I know I say this every week, but I promise that even if you feel like it's really specific to you and your goals, somebody else is going to benefit from hearing the response. You could ask about a topic. If you're not sure how to phrase it into a question, you just put topic, whatever the topic is, or you can ask a question about whatever it is that you want to chat about. It doesn't have to be related to any specific thing. I love this. I'm so excited to revisit my goals, even though nothing major has changed, but I feel like I've learned a lot these last 2 months. Yes, Jennifer. It's like that, what I was talking about, where you learn so much about what works for you and what doesn't work for you, what you have the capacity to do, whether that's more or less than what you've been doing. And it gives you a chance to just like check in and make sure that you are continuing on the path. Even if you, not you, Jennifer, you, everybody spends the refresh realizing you want all of your annual goals to stay the same. A lot of your action steps aren't changing. You're just kind of like tweaking some little things and moving into the new quarter. That's okay. It's giving yourself the time and space to reflect and decide what you want to do with that time, because you never know. And in fact, not only do you never know, it's really hard to realize when you're going to want that change. And so if we expect ourselves to just realize it, like, oh, I need a goal refresh right now. Again, sometimes it's obvious, right? Like you changed jobs or you had a baby, but like sometimes it's not. And so you need to set aside that time for yourself to reflect and think about your goals. And even if nothing drastically changes out of it. And I know I've also said this before, I don't have a banner for it. We inside the community and me, sorry, like throwing things around, me personally, I do these check-ins on the quarters of the year, right? So end of March, end of June, end of September, and then the new year. If that doesn't work for you, that's okay. You can pick to do these refreshes whenever it makes sense for you. I would recommend it being somewhere between every 2 to 4 months. I wouldn't do it less than 2, because having 2 months to learn about what's working and what's not working, and then anything more than 4, you can kind of like lose sight, and it can spiral into like negative, where you don't feel like you can pause and take a break and reflect. But if you, like, let's say that you're a teacher and you might say, I want to refresh at the end of spring break or during spring break, right? And let's say, I know for some of you, that's actually like this week or next week. So that is not as easy for you. You can go back and watch an old one. By the way, there will be things very specific to this quarter. Like I will talk about things specific to this quarter. It doesn't mean that you can't go back and watch an old one if you want to refresh this week. But then there's some of you on the East Coast where your spring break is in a couple of weeks, and you might decide that you want to wait, and you want to wait until then. And then instead of refreshing all the way in the middle of June, you're going to refresh as soon as the school year's over. And then you're going to do another one before the school year starts. And your refresh timeline might look different. That could also apply to you if you're not a teacher, if your spouse works in education, or your kid's school schedule really impacts your day-to-day life. Obviously not if everybody who has a child in school, it's going to impact your day-to-day life, but you know what I mean? Like if you're home with the kids, it really does impact it. Other scenarios that you have a different refresh. If you work in a industry where tax season is really busy for you, you might not be prepared in a couple of weeks. You might be in the depths of tax season, and you might need a refresh in the middle of April. There's no right or wrong when it comes to it. If you don't have any other reason, the quarters give you a nice reason to do so. Also, the beautiful madness calendar magic that both April and July are starting on a Monday. So, hello, I'm new here. Can you please share the main benefits of quarterly planning? For sure. And what I'm talking about here is not necessarily what I would call quarterly planning so much as a check-in with your goals for the year. And the main benefit is really that you have learned so much about yourself in the last 3 months. We're doing it a little bit early, almost 3 months in terms of your goals. Your life may or may not have changed, and you there is no rule that says that you have to pick a goal and keep it for the entire year. And by chunking it up into smaller chunks, we give ourselves that nice checkpoint to be like, is this the goal I still want to spend the rest of my year on? Is this the goal that is that where I want to be spending my time? Or maybe you're adding in a new goal. That's also an option. You're letting go of a goal, you're changing the wording. I've been known to just like tweak the words of my annual goals in the past. And then I like setting quarterly goals. I've talked about this in a number of videos before, and I will try to link the one that like I did originally talking about why I like quarterly goals. But the biggest reason is that it gives me a checkpoint. It gives me a place to say, did I or did I not achieve this at the end of the quarter? A lot of my annual goals are pretty vague. And if I just like went along my entire year focusing on those goals, I would probably still make progress on them, but I don't know that I would feel or see that progress as much as when I set a specific thing that I'm focused on each quarter. And then at the end of the quarter, I can sit there and say, yeah, I did that. Like I really did that. So for example, right, one of my annual goals is to make time for myself. And I could have not done anything specific and just let that be the goal and pick action steps related to that goal and probably still felt successful in Q1. But what I did for Q1, I picked consistent morning routine and scheduled doctor's appointments. And we still have almost a whole month left. But I feel pretty good about the progress that I've made. And those being that specific, I can look at that goal and say, yes, I did that. Check mark. Whereas if I just said, did I make time for myself? I might think like, oh yeah, I guess I did kind of like here or there, right? It just allows me to be a lot more focused on that particular thing and then see the progress at the end of the quarter. So again, even if you don't set quarterly goals, I still highly, highly, highly recommend that you do a quarterly check-in to check in with your annual goals. That's a big piece of it too. It's not just the quarterly goals. It is pausing and taking a look at our annual goals. And are these the goals that I still want to keep working on? I hope that answered your question. Because you definitely do not have to set quarterly goals to benefit from the refresh. I feel like I say this all the time, but I just to say it again to make sure, because there are always people who are new here. So number one, you do not have to set quarterly goals to benefit from the refresh. Number two, you can use any goal planner or no goal planner or just a notebook. You do not have to be using the goals with Laken planner. You can use whatever you want, and it will still benefit you. I will tell you what page numbers to be on for the main other goal planners. And I will support you regardless of what goal planner you use. That said, the Q2 version of the Goals with Laken Planner is up for purchase if you would like it. That went up yesterday. So, yay. What else? What is on your mind? What questions do you have? What are you struggling with? What do you want to chat about? Everyone just being quiet today. No, nothing. Ooh, I like this question. Thinking of starting a YouTube channel, totally here for you. Were you camera shy when you started? So, yes and no. I think that I don't think I could ever describe myself as camera shy because I have always loved giving presentations. I've always loved like being on stage. Like I've always been drawn to that kind of stuff. And I think that being a like having a YouTube channel was just a natural extension of that. I think I also had practice from I had been on Instagram for years and I had done Instagram lives, or y'all remember Periscope? So I think I had a little bit of practice there before I started. Now, that doesn't mean that I wasn't nervous. It doesn't mean that I didn't have fears about being on camera or that I was uncomfortable when I first started, because I absolutely was. It's a different vibe, like talking to a camera versus a presentation to a crowd full of people, or performing in a show to a whole audience. It's very different. And so getting used to that took a lot. Doing it like out in the world was also very difficult as well. And that I feel like I still struggle with. I feel like I got really comfortable with it in New York, and I'm like not quite there yet with Chicago. But um I will say it gets easier, but it never gets like it's not I don't know that some of those things don't go away. And I think part of it is um the internet is sometimes a not so nice place. And it is unfortunate that that's always in the back of my mind. And I'm not saying this to like scare you away from starting a YouTube channel, because I 1000% recommend starting a YouTube channel. Um, I just, it, I can't sit here and tell you that like I don't get nervous or self-conscious or think about those things when I'm on camera, because I do. I still 100% do. But I remind myself of the purpose and why it's important to me. So just have your reasoning, as with any goal, right? But have a why, but like let that drive you when the camera's shy, or when those things you're questioning those things. In terms of specifics, I actually have a whole playlist of every video I've ever done talking about starting a YouTube channel. I've done a lot. I've done like Q&As, and I've done specific tips videos, and those I have them all in a playlist. So I will link that for you. Highly recommend checking that out. And then if you have any other questions, let me know. I think it is one of those things that it is like I just wish I'd started it sooner. Like it was always like oh, I want to, oh maybe, oh, and I like kept putting it off. And like the only regret I would have is like I wish I'd started it sooner. So just start with your phone with free editing software. It doesn't have to be anything fancier than that. You're welcome. And again, happy to answer any questions that you have. Not a question. Can I just say that the goal planner is very helpful for me? It helps me with clear, concrete steps. I appreciate that very much. Agreed, especially with defining my goals, which is so important. I'm so glad you started one. Me too. Me too. Another thing I will say, you do not have to have all the answers when you start. You do not need to know exactly what niche you're going to be doing or what you're going to be like talking about for forever. When I first started my channel, I didn't talk about goals like at all. So it will develop, it like it will grow and change, and so don't feel like you have to sit and decide on this perfect thing before you start. This is so funny and ironic, Jennifer. So she asked, what shows and movies has everyone been enjoying? I've started Sabrina on Netflix. I think my taste has changed. Before, I think it was too dark. That is what I just finished binge watching again. I definitely watched it when it first came out. So if you don't know, they redid Sabrina. The Teenage Witch is not what it's called. It's called The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina on Netflix, and it is much darker. Like the original show, which I was obsessed with, is very like lighthearted and funny, and I'm actually watching that now, which I should have done it the other way for sure. And so they redid it. It's very dark, and I watched the first 2 seasons when it came out, and I don't remember when the other seasons were released, but I realized that I'd never watched 3 and 4. So I rewatched 1 and 2 and then watched 3 and 4. 4 is not near as good. Isn't that always the case? I feel like with a lot of shows, it's like you probably should have stopped at the one, like the season before you the last one. With most shows, they probably should have stopped before. Like it probably was, they could have wrapped it up and it was better in the penultimate season than the actual last season. We all know that's true for Game of Thrones. And what was the other show? Oh, like Lost last season. Come on. But I loved it. I mean, I enjoyed it. And that has been kind of what I was binge watching. And then I switched to now I'm watching the original, which is on Hulu, in case you were curious, which I love. Oh, I love me some Sabrina. I was joking with my mom. She had I Dream of Jeannie, and we had Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Yes, Stephanie. Oh, I love this question. How to handle goals that have no end point. For example, one of my goals is getting back to me. Now that I'm out of school and have a career set in place, how do I know when to reward myself? I love this question because I truly, truly believe that a lot of goals are like this. A lot of goals have no end point. I call them progressive goals because they are goals that you could literally progress on for forever. They have no end state. There is no time that you would be done. So, this is when defining your goals is really important. You have to take the time, again, go back to that video that I did at the very beginning of the year where these questions are in the Goals with Laken Planner, where you get really clear on what does that mean to you? Like, what does getting back to me mean to Stephanie? Because we could all have that goal and we could all define it differently. It could mean something different to every single one of us. And so taking the time always to get clear on what it means to you, and it really ties in, and doing that every couple of months and not just doing it at the beginning and then saying you're done. That said, in terms of when to reward yourself, this is when I do think quarterly goals can be helpful, or just shorter term things, right? So setting more concrete, shorter term goals. So maybe getting back to me means like, I'm trying to think of an example of if I was setting that goal, one of the things I feel like that makes me is my love for dance, right? So getting back to me could look like going to dance classes. And so I could set a goal that said, I'm going to go to 10 dance classes. And then once I go to 10, which could take it could take a long time, I would aim, even if you're not doing quarterly goals, aim for these shorter term things to not take more than maybe 3 months. So maybe 10 in 3 months would be a lot for me. So maybe I would actually start with like 5. Once I go to 5 dance classes, then I get to reward myself. Now, sorry, I have this itch on my leg. I feel like I'm awkwardly bouncing, trying to get the going to a dance class sounds like a reward in and of itself, and it absolutely is. It doesn't mean that you can't celebrate in some way, shape, or form when you have hit those milestones, right? So I could say, like, when I go to 5 dance classes, then I'm going to stop and get a smoothie on my way home from the 5th one. Or I'm going to get myself a new sports bra or something like that. I'm going to watch a show that I've been wanting to watch. I'm going to come home and take a bubble bath that I've been wanting to. And if it feels counterintuitive in your head to reward yourself with something that you like doing, it's okay. You're going to feel that way. I have felt that way in the past, but I've had to get over that because I know that you deserve to celebrate things because that was hard. Even if you enjoyed the class, I'm talking to like you, Laken, even if I enjoyed the dance class, it doesn't mean that coordinating that and figuring it out and getting myself to those 5 classes wasn't tough. And so I deserve to celebrate that. But it comes down to getting clear on what the goal means to you, defining it, setting smaller, more concrete, specific goals that you can reward yourself with at the end of it. And then for some of these goals, I also will just ask myself, like, out of 10, how do I feel about that goal? Right? If you go back and watch my 2023 goal check-in video, I most of my goals for the year are like this. They're not super concrete. And so at the end of it, I'm like, maybe like an 8 out of 10. Like, that feels pretty good. That feels like it's worth celebrating. And then there was one that was like a 0 out of 10. And then there was one that was like a 2 out of 10, right? Like, it is, I just kind of I ask myself, like, how do I feel like I'm making progress? And if the answer is I'm not, then where is that disconnect happening? Is it in the definition? Is it in the action steps, etc.? The other thing I will remind you, Stephanie, and anybody with these types of goals, when you're breaking these goals down, it's just an idea list. Like the action steps for these goals are just a lot of ideas, and there is no right or wrong action step to pick. This is going to be the hardest type of goal to like prioritize the action steps, because they're just like, you could do any of them and they're all going to get there. Going back to my annual goal this year of making time for myself. I'm looking at my like quarterly brainstorm and I have like 10. And I'm like, you can't, that's too many. You can't have that many goals in Q2. And so I'm like, which ones do I want to pick? And there's so many choices. And there's a lot of ways to go about prioritizing it. But my point is that you could still accomplish the goal without doing all the things on the idea list, is what I really want to say. I have 10 quarterly goal idea lists for that, my annual goal. If I don't do all of those in 2024, that does not mean that I have failed at that goal. It just means I didn't get to all my ideas, and I picked the ones that were the most impactful or important, or however I decided to prioritize, and the other ones I didn't get to. Those other ones might go on a brainstorm list for 2025. And if those fall, if they still seem to be important, or they may just go away. They may have just been ideas for this goal that I had this year, and then I never actually ended up working on them. It doesn't mean that they were a bad idea at the time. It just didn't end up being an idea that I used. Okay, I feel like I rambled a lot and I said a lot of things there, Stephanie. I hope that was somewhat beneficial for you. I do think the quarterly goal refresh will really help you with that too. And for those of you who aren't able to join live, as always, the calls are always recorded and the replays are always up as soon as technology allows. I always get messages. It's like, when is it going to be up? And I'm like, I don't know. Sometimes the export takes 5 minutes and sometimes it takes 50 minutes, and then it has to upload and then it has to process on Teachable. So I get it up as soon as I can. And yes, this call is going to be longer. If you can't do it all in one sitting, that's okay too. You can break it up into chunks and work on it over the course of a week or 2 weeks or whatever you need. Because I know I've also gotten messages that Saturdays aren't good for some of you. You're like, oh, my kids have all the activities. I'm both looking forward. This is not related to that, right? I'm both looking forward to activities and also not looking forward to having all the things on the weekends. It is one of the benefits. I just signed Lila up for something, and I was talking to another mom friend, and she was like, yeah, I'm looking at like the Sunday one. And I was like, I'm going to do the Friday one because I don't want to commit to the weekend. And I have the flexibility that we can go at noon on a Friday. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go at noon on a Friday. So, also, I feel like when you do activities when they're this little, it's a lot for me. It gets us out of the house, gives us something to do, entertains her. That was a random aside, but that's how I feel about baby activities right now. What else? Any other questions? It does not have to be about refreshing or quarters or whatever. It can be about, I mean, as Jennifer asked, does anyone have any answers to this question? Shows or movies that you've been enjoying? I also watched Sabrina on Netflix, and now I'm watching the one on Hulu, the old one. And So You Think You Can Dance came back this week. I have not watched the new episode from Monday, because that, I feel like, that's a good example of a reward, especially one that doesn't cost anything, that I need to make a reward. It's not, I really want to watch it, but I don't want to watch it in the background while I'm like doing dishes. Like, I just want to sit and watch it. And so I need to decide, like, what does that look like? When I do X, then I'm going to set aside time. I'm going to sit with a glass of wine and watch So You Think You Can Dance. But I'm really excited about it. I've gotten a couple of messages from some of you on Instagram that are like, did you watch it? All my fellow So You Think You Can Dance fans. I mean, we started watching season 1 in high school, which is just mind-boggling to me. And now, like, and Allison is now a judge, and Comfort is a judge. Oh, rewatching Orphan Black yet again. I have never even heard of that. Orphan Black. Hmm. The Way Home series on Hallmark. I also haven't heard of that. Time travel and a mystery. Hmm. Where I don't have like actual cable, so I'm not sure if something is on Hallmark if I'm able to watch it. You know, it is. We were having this conversation at dinner last night. The amount of streaming services, just like, oh, it, just there's so many, and trying to like, do you have this one? Do you have this one? Where do I watch this? And then we were googling like, there's really only a handful of media companies, and they all like own each other. And what was it that were under like the same umbrella? My brother was like, they have the audacity. Oh, it was Hulu and NBC. Whatever the company is that owns NBC also owns Hulu. And so my brother was like, wait, they own Hulu and they have the audacity to create Peacock? Like, come on. It's out of control. It is out of control. Orphan Black is amazing. Okay, I'll have to add that to my list. Let me tell you, here what's on my list if you I mean, I know they talk about this in lots of places, right? Like I watch comfort shows again and again. For me, it's Friends, Gilmore Girls, Gossip Girl, SVU sometimes. But really it's those other three. Like when I just need comfort, and want to rewatch again and again. It doesn't mean that I don't have a long list of TV shows that I want to watch, but like never prioritize. So Abbott Elementary is on my list. I've heard good things about that. All the Chicago shows. So Chicago Fire, Chicago Med, Chicago PD, those are all on my list. Happy Endings, I put on my list. I don't even know what that's about. Schmigadoon, I've heard lots of good things about. Ted Lasso, I still haven't watched, y'all. That was one of those shows. Sam and I started watching it. Well, let me take it back. I've watched the beginning. We started watching it during maternity/paternity leave together. And then we started doing, when he went back to work, we started doing shifts where like I would go to bed super early, he would stay up, and then we would, switch. And so he was like, so he would watch it at night when he was watching Lana. And then there's new Top Chef. That's on my list too. But lots of shows that I want to watch and have not prioritized. Interesting. I made the financial decision to have YouTube Premium and one other streaming service. I have to cancel one service to sign up for another. Dang, that's a really smart financial decision that we probably also would benefit from, and not pay for Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus and YouTube Premium. And my husband loves anime, so we also pay for Crunchyroll. If the truth is, if I could give up one of them, it probably would be Hulu. I feel like, with the exception of like The Handmaid's Tale, there's nothing on Hulu that I watch regularly. So I feel like we probably could get rid of that one. I do watch Disney Plus all the time. That's the other. If I don't want a comfort show, I go watch a comfort Disney movie on Disney Plus. Oh, it makes me very happy. All right. Any other questions? Anything else on your mind? All right. I'm going to ask you my last question. What is the one thing you are going to do this week to make progress on your goals? What is the one small step you're going to take to keep working on your goals and making them a priority? It does not have to be huge. One small step that you're going to do. Mine is the same thing I said at the beginning. It is one day at a time. Focusing on one day at a time. And maybe by next week, I'm going to feel a little bit more in control of the chaos over here. And I'll be able to feel a little bit more on top of it. But for now, that's what we're doing. Yeah, Keith, this is what I kind of wanted to do. Watch the Chicago ones in the chronological order. So you watch like season 2 of Fire, then 1 of PD. Yeah. No, that's absolutely what I wanted to do. I even looked it up. It's like 500 episodes total of all the shows together. It's like insane amount of content. But now that we live here, I feel like it would be really fun. We'll see. TBD. Plan next week, schedule, and watch the replay for tonight's community call. For those of you who can't make it live, you can always watch the replay. It is always there for you. Celebrate my, I started reading one and clicked the other. Celebrate my win of paying off my credit card by reading at a coffee shop. I love that action that you have chosen. That is so fun. If you are here watching the replays, then you're still here. Thank you. Please also comment your one thing, and let's hold each other accountable to you getting that one thing done this week. All right. If you don't have any other questions for me, I would appreciate you giving this video a thumbs up before you head out. And if you're new here, please click that subscribe button. I upload new videos every week focused on helping you achieve your goals. Thank you so much for hanging out today.